founder president of Garze Marathi Global. Welcome you all to this very important webinar in a series of Garze Marathi Innovation Academy webinar series. Garze Marathi Innovation. First, I'll talk about Garze Marathi. Garze Marathi is a platform of global Marathi people who have come together on the main principles of education, entrepreneurship, networking, and giving back to our society and roots. Uh, I will not talk much about Garze Marathi. One can always visit our website and see what it is. Garze Marathi Innovation Academy uh, is an initiative which we started about 2 months back, and the main purpose of this initiative is to promote entrepreneurship and support startup new young entrepreneurs from our community as well as from Maharashtra. Today in the series, we have every Saturday every alternate Saturday, one technology and one business webinar that we host. Today's topic is very important, and for that we have invited two young entrepreneurs whom I will introduce. Rupali Deshpande is a technology enthusiast, and she has completed her engineering in electronics and telecommunication from MIT Pune. And since then, she has been integral part of tech industry. She also holds an MBA degree from Hult International Business School, San Francisco, and she's currently working at NVIDIA Santa Clara, California, as a global business manager for medical instruments. She strongly believes in empowering future generations through education and knowledge. In her free time, she engages with the students through AI talks and the seminars, and also runs technology workshops for the children in the local community to create interest and curiosity in young minds towards the technology. Our other speaker, who has graciously agreed to our request and joined us today, is Ananta Shankar Subramaniam. He is also a solution architect from NVIDIA, and practically they have similar profiles. And he is there to accelerate the autonomous driving efforts and workloads on NVIDIA GPU computing platform. Over to Rupali Deshpande for today's proceedings. And thank you very much, everybody who has joined. And I request everybody to stay mute during the conversation, during the meeting. And if you have any questions, please post them in a chat. I will invite the questionnaire at the end of the presentation to read out their questions. Over to Rupali Deshpande. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Anandji, for giving us this opportunity. So it's great. I've been attending so many webinars. It's nice to give one to be just on the other side. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So today, let me go ahead and share my screen. Just trying to. Okay.
And keep it in slideshow mode.
Anandji, is it okay? Is it?
I can see your slide. If you keep it in a full screen and a slideshow mode, it will be easier.
Okay, so it's showing the presenters mode.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Carry on. It is showing the slideshow mode. Please carry on.
Okay. Is it showing the full screen or just the?
No, this is okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair
okay.
enough. Please carry on.
Okay. Cool. So okay, let me go ahead and. Okay, so sorry, I'm just trying to adjust the Teams thing. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with Teams, so I'm just trying to. Okay, so okay, so hello everyone. So I'm Rupali Deshpande, and Anant is. So we are colleagues. We are at NVIDIA, And generally, we talk about AI and deep learning to like students, from engineering schools. Like we have given these talks, at USC, at San Jose State University. So our sole intent is really to so that students can understand what is this whole AI and deep learning, how it is impacting the industry, and if they would like to, be part of this, what is the way, what are the tools and resources they can adapt and start developing their skill sets. So it's basically just evangelizing the technology and just kind of guiding them in this world of AI. So that's our intent. So this talk is specifically like for students or for young entrepreneurs or literally anyone who is interested, in this field of AI. If you just want to learn about this, okay, how it is impacting, and if you also want to kind of work a bit, create some small projects in AI, this talk is really for them. By no means we say that we are experts in this. We happen, we do work in this field, and it's more of an introductory session that we would like to give. And yeah, you can happy to we can absolutely keep it interactive as well. And and we can have a nice conversation around it as we go through the presentation. So with this, let me quickly. Okay. Okay. The slides are changing, right? Just
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so let me go through the agenda quickly, what we're going to cover in an hour today. So basically, we will talk about AI and deep learning, I would say ecosystem, how this ecosystem was evolved, who are the major players. Then we'll talk a little bit about what are the deep learning fundamentals, like, the concepts of like training, inferencing, and, some of the other basic concepts. We'll touch upon how is deep learning implemented in the real world. We'll talk about all the interesting use cases. We'll also talk about what are the different roles in this deep learning the industry. And then if you want to be part of this industry, or if you want to learn deep learning, what are the tools and resources those are available, in the ecosystem. So we'll touch upon these things as well. So this is like the brief agenda. So let me go ahead and get started. Okay, so since we both happen to work at NVIDIA, we thought that our talk would be mostly from the lens of NVIDIA, because that's the technology we are closest to. And I just thought of bringing this slide because as you really see, like NVIDIA is one of the most high performing stocks. Just see the transition, like from 2000 to 2015, it was pretty flat. It was somewhere, I think it swung between like $9 to maybe $25. But from 2015, it just took off, and today I think it's above 550. So just within the span of 5 years, the jump that it has caused. And so I just want to talk about what really changed after 2015. So NVIDIA was started in '94, but since then we have been kind of world leaders. It's in terms of graphics or in terms of even compute, we have been leaders. But something really ticked after 2015, and that was the evolution of AI and deep learning. And companies like NVIDIA heavily invested in this. They created tools and resources. So basically, we created the GPUs, or the chips that could accelerate the process of deep learning through our compute platforms, which already existed. And we also created some amazing software stack tools and applications that can help in the AI application development. And because of this investment and this stock really kind of took off. And this is the story not just with NVIDIA, but so many other companies all around the world. So this is just kind of I would say a yardstick through which we can say that really AI is changing the world. I mean, it can change fate of the company so much, and it has just changed the whole paradigm. So this kind of reiterates that AI is important and is going to be relevant for next few decades at least. So just wanted to share this quickly, a short story. Okay, so before I get started, let me let me touch upon the basic concepts of what really is the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. You know, all around today, we just hear about these three words very often, and it and even before I got deeper into this domain, even I thought like maybe yeah, all these are kind of same. Yeah, AI, machine learning, deep learning. You know, so but I thought let me put things a bit in perspective and tell what exactly is the difference. These three things are similar but different. So how they are is, so AI is basically the broader, I would say it's a broader concept. So anything that computers can do which requires human level of intelligence, we categorize that into AI. So that's a very broad definition. Now there is something called machine learning, which is a subset of AI. So it's one of the approaches towards AI. So basically, machine learning uses the statistical approach where you basically construct a model using the observed data. So what does it really means is, we as humans or developers have to identify what are those particular features in that structured data, and we have to write it in an algorithm. And that's basically how we train the basically train the software. So if you remember, like 1980s, a classic example was basically the email spam filters, when the concept of spam started, where all these spam emails would be automatically diverted in the spam folder. So that was a classic example of machine learning. So this is so where there is a structured data, where there is machine learning is extremely useful there. But then what happened in 2010s, the era of smartphones started, social media and the internet, it just kind of took off. And there was so much of data generated. There were different sensors, there were different platforms through which this data was generated. And this was mostly unstructured data, and some of the problems were hard using the machine learning approach. And hence the new approach was developed, which is called as deep learning. So deep learning is a subset of machine learning, which basically is one of the approaches towards machine learning. You can say that way. So basically, what happens? This whole feature extraction process, which we'll talk in detail later, was completely automated. The software took care of the feature extraction process, and basically we just train the network, and it would just learn on itself, seeing the data without we as humans or developers explicitly telling about, okay, look here, look there, inside the data. The software can just look at the data, and it can learn on itself. So this concept of deep learning opened up various new possibilities, because it was easy to adopt, and the ecosystem just got developed so beautifully. So today, like even you and I, who want to develop like a quick project in deep learning, it's so much easy to sort of develop. So this ease of and the accuracy, just made it possible for the deep learning to become mainstream. So these are the basically broad definitions of these three very important, I would say, terminologies that we hear day in and day out. So I thought to give a quick, quick snapshot around this. So. Okay, so let's talk about again another example I would like to give, just like NVIDIA, just to reiterate the fact that how AI is critical for even for internet applications. So if you really see in the year 2012, a company like Google, like it had like almost zero application developed on deep learning. But then if you see by the end of 2016, they had almost 4,000 applications. And just talk of any app of Google, take any app of Google, and it uses deep learning. So this was a massive adoption of deep learning that that just took off even for a company like Google. So just to reiterate that deep learning is sort of important, and how it is taking off, and how it is being adopted. Okay, so let's talk about, let's go a little bit detail into this this new computing model. So let's take a look at the machine learning. So if there's a particular problem, for example, if you want the software to identify cars, And if you want to take a more traditional approach of machine learning, then how would you go ahead and do it? So basically, a computer vision engineer or an expert would actually take a look at the data and then decide which are the important features inside the data, and then write it in the terms of software. And for example, if it is a car, then you're just describing its edges, and telling about that it has like maybe 4 wheels, like headlights. You're just taking all these main features and translating it into an algorithm, and then how all these features can be connected so that the software is able to identify different cars. So this was a very traditional approach, which machine learning uses. First of all, it requires a lot of domain expertise. You literally have to like develop some custom algorithms for particular tasks. And again, you train the algorithm, or you write the algorithm to identify cars, but then now you want the algorithm to identify maybe trucks. Then you have to write another set of features which describes which describes trucks, and that's when the algorithm will start identifying trucks along with cars. So you have to go through that process, once again, write all those features. So it's pretty time consuming, and it's not easily scalable. So but whereas with deep learning, it's just so simple. Basically, you just take, basically it just learns from data. You take a neural network, and we'll again go detail into it. You take a neural network and you just show the bunch of pictures of cars to the network, and it will learn from itself. It will extract the features, and it will learn from itself and just learn to identify cars. Similarly, if you want the same algorithm to start identifying trucks, you just show a bunch of data or the pictures of truck, and it will start identifying that. So it just learns from data. It's very easily expandable. And that's what I meant by the ease of use, or the ease of adoption. So this is basically just wanted to get like, this is the difference in the approach between machine learning and deep learning. Now, just to talk about certain industries, which are the different industries that are using deep learning. So again, we'll get into a little more detail on the use cases, but just to give a snapshot, whether it is about the internet services, like you have to identify or classify a video or image, then deep learning is used. It's very, very heavily used in the field of medicine, whether it is for cancer detection, or whether it's for drug discovery. It's very heavily used in that field. Even something like media and entertainment, where you have to do video captioning or natural language processing, where you have those subtitles, which are displayed, in the videos. Those are all done by deep learning. Then is the security and defense, when you have to do facial recognition. That's where deep learning is used. And of course, we all know, right, autonomous machines, or which is like, self-driving cars, which is one of the very important applications of deep learning. So these are some of the industries where deep learning is being adopted. And so now let's take a quick look at how this ecosystem was evolved. So, getting some noise. So if you can please mute if you're not speaking.
Everybody, please stay mute, please. I'm muting all, and Rupali, you unmute yourself again. Eh?
Oh, okay.
Okay, Rupali, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So just talking about how this entire ecosystem was evolved. So like I said, it basically started with data. There was like so much of data that was generated. Then the researchers like Berkeley and NYU, they started that, okay, what do we do with this? What do we do this with data? How can we put this data into a better use, where basically we can leverage it for for mainstream applications. So that's when they developed this whole the network, the deep neural network, what we call as, which through which the network can learn from the data and can do certain tasks. So this is how the deep neural networks were generated. And then when it became a little mature, that's when companies like Facebook and Google, they took these networks and they created a framework around it, on the framework on which these networks can be deployed. So that's when you have these TensorFlow, PyTorch, these kind of frameworks which were created specifically for deep learning and AI. And that's when companies like NVIDIA as well, created tools to accelerate this whole process of deep learning. And so once there was this network, and then there was a framework to deploy it, companies like Amazon and Google and Microsoft, they came up with computing platform, because one thing which was inevitable with these frameworks and networks is like you need a lot of computing power, because there is so much of data that the network has to learn and read and process, that you really need those very powerful compute resources. And okay, so how do we make that available? So that's when the companies like Google and Azure or Microsoft and Amazon came up with their cloud platform. And they started like AI as a platform, or AI as a service, where you can just go and rent an instance on the cloud, and you can start your deep learning development. So because deep learning and these resources, these tools, and this compute platform was readily available, a lot of startups suddenly emerged. That's when the era of 2015, 2016, it just took off. Like you can see a lot of startups who started building deep learning applications, and that's when this whole VC funding around AI and everything just kind of took off. Now, once there was this startup ecosystem was developed, that's when the industry leaders, like the bigger ones, like the Audis and the BMWs and eBays, they started adopting AI. And a lot of them actually leveraged their softwares and the algorithms, those were developed by these startups, and they integrated in their workflows. And that's when they started investing and developing and investing in the field of deep learning and AI. And that's how the whole ecosystem was evolved. And today, I know these numbers are like almost 3 or 4 year old, but there are like, I don't know, today maybe 100, maybe now 100,000 startups which are doing work in the field of AI. And the funding, I don't know, this number maybe it's 33 billion. Like I said, it's a very old number. I didn't update the slide, but it's easily 5 times of what it is displayed here. So huge ecosystem, huge investment was done, and this whole universe of AI or deep learning was created. So this is how the ecosystem was evolved. Now let's take a look at how exactly these deep learning algorithms or applications work. So I'll give an example, and we'll go through the process step by step. So first, if you want to develop an application in deep learning, what do you need? The most important thing that you need is basically the training data set. Now let's take an example. You want to develop an application that can identify different kinds of animals. And let's be very precise, it can identify maybe cats versus dogs. And so basically what you need is, you need data, right? You need data, like, and not just like thousands of images of cats and dogs, of different poses, of different breeds in different environments. Like, more the diverse is the database, better it is, the data set, better it is. So first you need the whole training data set, thousands of images. Second, what you really need is, okay, my computer is behaving a little weird. Okay. So second, what you need is the untrained neural network, something that through which you can train, you can train that data set. So you need an untrained neural network. So as you can see here, it has the input and the output layers. So, and all these layers are connected to each other using those green dots. Those are called as neurons. And those are very similar to the neurons which are there in our brains. So just imagine this as a human brain. So you have these, and here, it actually shows only 4 layers, but in reality, there are so many more number of layers, and that's why it's called as deep neural network, because the layers are really deep. So every input layer is connected to the output layer, and with the help of neurons. So these neurons hold the information, in them. And so you take basically the untrained network, and then you, once you take the untrained network, you basically you basically take that training data set, and you walk that data set through the network. Just imagine how we teach a kid to identify cats and dogs. You basically just show a bunch of pictures, right, about cats, or you actually show like the real time, like cats and dogs, and then till the time the kid gets it right, you keep on training, you keep on training, you keep on showing the pictures. That's exactly the same concept that we do with deep learning. So basically, you take the training data set, the pictures of cats and dogs, and you walk it through, and you basically walk it through the network, like one by one. And as you can see, there are two output layers here. One is for cat and one is for dog. So so basically, when you start giving, so the first time when you take the training data set, it basically tells you that it basically just guesses whether it's a cat or a dog, and then the network will then go back and check. For example, if it said like 60%, maybe it is cat, if that's what network identified. Also, the other important thing I forgot to mention, that this data set which we need to have, it has to be a labeled data set. So every image you should write whether it's image of a cat or it's image of a dog, so that the neural network, when it makes the guess or when it identifies, it can compare it with the label, and we can decide, and the network can decide for itself how accurate it is. So at the end, when it says that it's 60% cat, the neural network will go at the back, and suppose it is correct, then it will basically find out what are the neurons or what are the layers that contributed to the correctness to the correctness of the output, and depending on that, it will increase the weight or it will decrease the weight. And this is how you basically train the network again and again. So just in simple words, just imagine you training a kid to identify dogs and cats. It's a similar process till the time you get it right. You go on training. That's when you make the judgment how much you want to train it, and then at the end, when you feel that now the network is capable of identifying cats and dogs accurately, that's when you say that your network is trained to identify cats versus dogs. So this is basically a trained network. You can see some of the neurons are big, some of them are small. So this basically talks about the confidence vector, and these decide that how the output is going to be, how accurate the output is going to be. So this is basically a trained new model, and then now what you do is, okay, you have this basically trained model. Now what do you do with this? You have a model that can identify cats and dogs. Now this whole process, by the way, is called as training. Now the second thing is, what do you do with this trained model? So now, okay, sorry guys, my I don't know, my PowerPoint is kind of just gets stuck in between.
It's okay. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. Okay, so basically you take this model and you deploy it. Now you can deploy it in any n number of ways, basically, and this process is called inferencing. Basically now you have trained the kid. Now you actually put the kid, in a real world exam. You ask the kid to sit for an exam where it can where it should be able to identify cats and dogs. Something similar. You take the network and you deploy it, on a platform. So it could be in terms of an app. Or maybe it could be in terms of a camera. Maybe you can have something like you take a camera, you install it on the gate, and if there is a dog, then maybe give access. If it is a cat, then don't give access. Something like that. You write a short code through which you can through which you can ask the camera to do this particular task. So this whole identification process is done by the network. Or and there are a lot of such creative things through which you can deploy it for inferencing, and your network will perform the tasks. And if you feel that in real time the network is not giving those accurate results, you can again always go back to the training process, train it with some new data set, and put it back into action. So this is an ever evolving and ongoing process. But just imagine once the network has this capability, there are so many creative things you can do, right? You can have it in terms of apps, you can have in terms of smart camera, and lot of other things. So basically, this is the process. And yeah, it sounds simple, and it is, because most of the work has been done by the data scientists and by the researchers there. So it's easy for us to just take this to take these resources and tools and create applications, and that's why it is so much easier and scalable. So let's talk about some of the basically some of the DL or AI tasks that that can be done using basically using this approach. So okay. Did my screen sharing stop by some reason? Anandji, can you share my?
It is showing somebody's resume. It is showing somebody's resume.
Yeah, I think someone's shared screen or something.
Somebody shared screen.
All right. Yeah, because this is not my desktop. So
people do that. Yeah.
Okay, wait. Just I'll go ahead and share my screen again.
Yeah, then he will get bounced off. Who can do that?
Okay. Can you see my screen again? Now, what problems are you solving?
Yeah. Now it's fine.
Oh. No, it's okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Thank you.
No.
Everybody, please don't interrupt. Please don't share screen. That is worst thing to do. Sorry. Please carry on.
Sure. No worries. Okay. So let's talk about what are the problems that can be solved through this approach. So the input could be anything, right? It could be text, it could be images, it could be video, it could be audio, any kind of, so data can be in any format. So if you really want to, take it from a business perspective, the questions is, suppose if you want to kind of find whether a particular object is present or not. Like for example, if the cat or a dog is present in a particular image or not, then that task is called as detection. It's called as object detection in the language of AI or deep learning. So let's take an example of healthcare, which is like cancer detection. So basically, you will basically see the MRI scans, and the algorithm can tell whether there is a cancer or there is whether the cells are cancerous or not cancerous. So that is the task of object detection. Now, the second task is, what type of thing it is. If you want to classify, okay, now you detected it's cancer, but the next step would be like, okay, if you want to classify that cancer, then the DL or AI task for the algorithm would be to identify what kind of cancer it is. That's the task of classification. The third thing is, if you want to find out to what extent is it present, which is basically segmentation. So so segmentation is about, you tell about, the algorithm will tell what is the tumor size. It will do some shape analysis. Maybe it will even tell at what stage the cancer is. So this is the task of segmentation that the DL will perform. The fourth one is, what is the likely outcome, which is basically the prediction. Okay, you have these, you identified, you detected, you segmented the cancer. But then the prediction that the algorithm can do basically is the survivability. So it can tell what are the chances that the patient will survive. Again, depending on all the parameters. So that's the task of prediction. And then the last one is the recommendation. Again, recommendation is basically, again, considering all the parameters. What is the therapy that you would recommend? Basically, would it be radiation or would it be surgery? So that's the task of recommendations. So generally, any deep learning algorithm or an application you take, the task that it will do will fall in any of these categories, or or maybe all of these categories. But generally, these are the 5 categories in which these are the 5 deep learning tasks that those are generally performed. If you take any application in real world. So with that, let's take a look at the deep learning, how it is actually implemented in real world. So I would like to share a couple of interesting examples with all of you. I thought, let me share, this is like my favorite one. So this is out of India. So this is basically developed by some of the IIT students. So it's an app called Recipe Book. So, we all of us, when we come back from a long day and we want to kind of cook something, we open the refrigerator and we are thinking, okay, what do we cook now? Okay, what ingredients do I have? We basically start, and it's a very, sometimes it's a very frustrating task as well, okay, where we are trying to figure out, okay, what do I cook? So this particular application solves this problem. So they have developed an app through which you just take your phone, the phone will access your camera, and it will scan each and every item which is present in the refrigerator, and it will tell you what all are the ingredients present, and through those ingredients what all are the different dishes that you can cook. And it can also basically tell you like some of the best recipes those are available on the internet. So this is what this app does. It solves that problems. It's basically, you don't have to think, what ingredients do I have, what do I need to cook. So this application, and it uses deep learning, like it uses object detection, because it has to detect like what all are the objects those are present, and then it has to basically classify them, give recommendations. So all these DL tasks that I mentioned, it beautifully uses all of them in this application. So it's one of the very interesting examples. The second one is in the healthcare. So healthcare, I would say, like, deep learning in healthcare is extremely, I would say, relevant or extremely important, because it's actually helping save lives. So for example, these premature babies, because their body parts are not completely developed, there's a very high chance that that it might end up into infant blindness if not detected or treated at the right time. So this Martino Center, they have created this deep learning algorithm through which they have trained the algorithm to identify the ROP, which is basically diagnosing retinopathy of prematurity, which is basically infant blindness, and through which it can tell the doctor whether there is a potential that it might result into infant blindness, and accordingly doctor can basically take a decision. Now again, by this there is no way that this AI and DL are going to replace doctors. No way. Like, doctors and their expertise is valued and will continue to be valued always. This is more of an assistant. It's more of an assistant for the doctor. It's to make their life easier, or more like a second opinion, you can say. AI, just think of AI or DL like that in terms of healthcare. And by no means it means to replace the human expertise. So, but this is how it can help in diagnosing diseases. The other one is again very, very interesting. This is again from India. So it's called Aindra. So again, I think this is a Bangalore-based startup where they do the early detection of cervical cancer. So this is specifically for the village and the rural areas where where basically the healthcare facilities are not that advanced. So the stats say that a lot of women, their cervical cancer is just not detected earlier because they don't have access to healthcare resources. So they have to go to the city, take the appointment, and in that whole process, a lot of delays are caused, and a lot of women have lost their lives. So here, what Aindra did is they have developed a very small device, which uses again deep learning to it. You just take the sample, and the device will tell you whether whether there is a possibility or whether there is a chance of cervical cancer or not. And so these are deployed in the local hospitals, and the doctors can easily use it. So you don't really need that expertise, where you have to take the sample to the lab and it needs to be, analyzed by the experts. It can, like, the first screening can be done at the local level, and if there is some abnormality, then quickly they can go to they can go to the city and they can find the right expertise and get it treated. So a huge thing to the mankind, I would say. It's like, and like we said, like, early detection is the strongest weapon, against any disease. So this is what exactly it's helping. Also, this is very relevant in some of the remote countries like Africa. So the stats actually say that in some of the remotest countries like Africa, there are like maybe 45 radiologists only available. So just imagine 45 radiologists. I mean, there's no way they can serve this large population. And that's exactly where AI can help. AI can help with that first initial level of screening, so basically the healthcare expertise can be made accessible to the large population where the human expertise is not easily available. So this is where it holds great importance. The other one is natural language processing. So this is again the Columbia University have developed this hearing aid through which when we are talking, when we are not really using like so basically when we are trying to have a conversation, as a normal human being, we tend to suppress the noises which are around, and we can only hear the people whom we want to hear. For example, if we are sitting in a restaurant, and we automatically, our brain kind of filters out the noise which is around, and you hear to the person whom you want to hear. But the people who are using hearing aid, that's not that's not the case. I mean, the hearing aid amplifies the voices equally, whether it is noise or whether it is whether it is the person you're conversing with. It will just amplify all the noises or all the sounds equally. Here, what it does, it actually accesses like the wearer's brain waves and tries to understand whom the wearer is trying to hear, and it will amplify only those sounds and will kind of will filter out the all the sounds and noises around it. So this is again and all this happens in just 2 or 3 seconds of the time. So this is something which uses natural language processing, and really so this is something, another thing which uses deep learning. The other thing is again retail. So in retail, of course, right, it's all the recommendations, just to understand like buying patterns, how you do targeted advertising. For example, like Amazon's recommendation engine, it uses deep learning at the back end. So lot of retail, lot of retail vendors are using deep learning for their smart advertising, and so that they can do the whole ROI analysis. So it's a huge thing in retail as well. Second is, then the other one is really graphics. So in terms of visual, or in terms of the creative field, you basically can take a texture of one image and basically style of another image, and you can create a third image which is like the combination of the two images. So it's a different style that is created. Again, that's using deep learning. So another interesting domain. The other one is agriculture. Now, this is something extremely interesting. So there's a company called Blue River, which is now acquired by John Deere. So they have like this camera which is installed in front of in front of the vehicle, and so this camera actually takes a look at the different kinds of plants, and then it decides how much herbicide you need to basically that every plant needs, so that you're not just putting like herbicides on all the plants, even on the good plants, and just end up damaging them. It identifies the weeds and the plants which needs herbicides, and then it will spray accordingly. So it basically monitors. That's what it is, like a smart farm machines through which you can monitor this and accordingly spray the herbicides. So this is another cool app developed by solution developed by Blue River. Again, also in terms of music, another interesting one that so there is it's called IVA Technologies. So here they have trained the deep neural network basically to compose a music, compose a classical based music. And this is not, when we say compose, it's not about just copying one music onto another, but here the deep learning can actually come up with original compositions, because it has learned different kinds of classical musics. And for the first time, I think it has got the I would say the recognition of a composer. It's a first non-human composer that it has got that kind of recognition. So this is also something interesting in the music industry. Then the other thing, I think this is my last example. Again in healthcare, given the COVID-19 situation today, so there is a company in Mumbai called Cure.ai. So basically what they do is, when this whole pandemic started, testing and everything was really a hassle. So they developed this deep learning algorithm through which you take the X-ray scans, and through the X-ray scans, it can tell whether the patient, whether the patient has COVID or not. So it's not like a final testing, but at least like a first level of screening that it can tell that whether there's a person has COVID, what are his or her chances of survivability, how critical it is, all those parameters. So they have created this amazing algorithm. It is FDA approved as well, and through which it can basically detect lung infections. And then also it can, also there's another cool applications, for surgery analytics as well. So I know one of our partners, they have developed this application where, through using again deep learning and AI, so when surgeons are performing surgery, they can so basically many of the times it happens that the tools and the tools and the scissors and all are accidentally left inside the patient's body. I mean, it sounds a little weird, but this has happened. A lot of cases, a lot of casualties, and people have died, because of this. So their algorithm basically tells if there is a tool or something that is left inside a patient's body, it kind of alerts the surgeons. So that's so these kind of lot of OR or these applications are developed as well, specifically in the field of healthcare. So yeah, so these are a couple of examples through which deep learning, basically deep learning is being used as a technology, and how it is really being adopted by different industries, and how it is basically changing this all the different industries. So just talking about a couple of challenges. So any new technology comes with new challenges, right? The whole thing is this is a completely new computing model. It's ever evolving. It's extremely rapidly evolving. The biggest thing is how do we as consumers, how we as developers keep pace with it? Again, how there is the most important aspect here is the training aspect. There's so much of data. How do you train it? How fast do you train it? That's another challenge. And then the deployment, because how do you deploy it? You need to be able to deploy it as an app, or even in the smallest form factor like a small camera. So you need to have these deployment platforms available. So these are a couple of challenges which come with deep learning. And with this,